I got this piece of, let's see, where's that camera? There we go. Ambrosia maple from Ted Rasmussen, a club member. And, you know, and a lot of times when people are making an object, yeah, that's good. You know, they want to find some embellishment. But once I got in here and saw all these, as soon as I started turning it, and I could see there were just tons of these ambrosia streaks, and I just kind of love the way the wood came out. So it still needs another coat of finish. And I made this shape because when I got the piece of wood, it had already been rounded, but there was a big nail stuck in it, which was marked. And I knew, and I pulled it out and it left a pretty big hole. So I kind of had to shape the bowl to try to avoid the hole from the nail, but still use as much of it as I could. So haven't seen any ambrosia maple recently that I liked as much as this piece. So
is that water locks?
Yes.
Did you get the water locks finished to work? We were talking about that a few
yeah,
months ago.
I'm using the John Kelsey method of putting the water locks on. Hopefully I'm doing it. I'm using the gray
Scotch Brite.
Gray Scotch Brite and putting the water locks on there and rubbing it in, and that seems to be working pretty well. As long as I don't let my can of water locks get exposed to the air very long, that creates problems.
You're doing that on the lathe or off?
What, the finishing? Off the lathe. Yeah.
No, I'm using stop loss bags for
Okay.
water locks.
Well, yeah, I just got some containers at Woodcraft in little plastic bottles with tips. So I filled them up to the brim and sealed them up. Hopefully that's going to help me preserve my water locks.
Very pretty wood.
Thanks. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's
Very
beautiful
nice.
wood.
I'd like to get more of that.
Nice job, Larry.
I don't know.
By the way, my experience with those Woodcraft bottles and water locks is that the water locks eats the tips.
Great.
I found that the stop loss bags work really well.
Yeah,
I use the stop lock, but I love them too.
And then we had a guy, Duxbury, on here one time, showed us what he does. He never opens the can. He just drives a little metal screw into it and then loosens the screw, drips out the finish he wants, puts the screw back in. Seems to work. No new air gets in.
Okay.
Is that smoke wood?
Last meeting, I was given a piece of smoke wood. I had no idea that this even existed, but this is apparently.
You can see in the monitor what we're seeing.
Yeah, I can. I'm holding it against my.
Yeah.
Here, so you can see that smoke wood is truly smoke wood. It's fascinating. I've never seen this before, but it's a nice little. Yeah, it turned well. I used your grit and your finish from last meeting, so I was real happy with that. And I don't want to do it now because it might drop something onto the wooden floor. But this is an incense burner that I had to create a little draft hole on the side because without it, it wouldn't burn.
And what did you put in it to burn? Incense? Or
Incense, yeah. I got a little thumb notch on the side to pop it open, but that is a smokewood seed. Smokewood
I can
pot.
also think, now that you got that hole in there for your finger, I can think of how else that might smoke. But maybe that's for a
It's not
different
legal in
meeting.
this state yet. When I go up to Massachusetts, I'll let you know.
Is there any kind of a holder for the incense
Yes.
inside? Can you open it up and show?
Go back so the camera sees it.
Oh.
The dudes in the yeah.
I'll get the parts.
I kind of didn't want to because of that. Yeah. It's a Stella bottle cap, epoxy to the bottom.
Very cool.
So,
Well
and
It's just a press fit.
the inside, it press fits well. I've got a little thumb cut on the side so you can pop it out. So, there we go. Smokewood, good.
I actually brought 4 pieces. The first one for the challenge, we were to turn something useless. I call this a wobble bowl. I don't quite know what you would use it for. And so, in other words, it's useless.
You use it to entertain Mike Clearbach. He loves that stuff.
And I've been working on bowls lately, just trying to clean up my technique. And so, yeah, the first one here is a little Spalted maple. Second one is mulberry, which has some very nice grain. And this last one I showed on a Thursday morning, but this is a walnut and spalted maple bowl.
How long ago did you make the walnut and maple one?
As a matter of January, and
Any, got any movement or moving, any discontinuities in there?
Barry was the one that said he wondered about that. And so far, I would say nothing more than what you normally feel for a segmented turning. You can feel a few little ones, but that's not so much on the transverse, but I feel it more on the parallel stuff.
Use
So
epoxy or
type on two.
type on.
Bring it back in August.
Yeah,
Have the
sure.
humidity
We'll see what
stop.
happens then.
After serving a salad in it.
What was your finish on that?
Those are all antique Minwax, antique oil. Yeah.
I got a couple challenge pieces. I also want to make the observation that it's kind of hard to make something that is truly useless. Just experimenting with turning some old epoxy and corian, courtesy of Kaufman Kitchens. I made this little toroid and then glued on a piece of corian that I had turned and polished. And my wife saw it and she said, that makes a good paperweight. So there goes the uselessness feature right there. And with that, I realized nothing is really useless. Well, maybe that wobble bowl comes in there. It's kind of light and oversized for a paperweight, but in time, something will be found for it. And the other thing is a bottomless coffee cup. Or as a restaurant might say, bottomless cup of coffee. Of course, it can't be a cup of coffee, but this was a technique of the accomplishment here was getting the handle to be of the same piece as the body with an invisible glue joint that is achieved by first band sawing that profile on the outside, not on the inside, of course. And then drilling through the handle here and snapping the handle off. And if you snap it off close to the vessel, and make sure that you either tape over the wood fibers or preserve it in some fashion so you don't lose any wood fibers. After it's all been turned and you just turn it down to the top of this and then from here to here and from here down. And so there are these two bands of wood going around it that you then just with a straight block of wood and sandpaper work it vertically to get them down to the same level as the rest of the cylinder. And then you glue the handle back on. And it
Nice work.
That's an amazing technique.
Yeah.
this is English walnut, by the way. And the joints are pretty much invisible. I guess that would depend on the species of wood that you use and if any fibers flew out when you snapped it. So that's my challenge stuff.
This isn't a new turning. It's a multi-axis bowl. It's kind of a mess around piece. It'll probably never actually be finished. Just trying different techniques on it. And it sits kind of like this sideways, where the Saturn bowl, the wing is flat. And you do this, you turn it like this, and you turn a ball. And the closer you get to a ball, the better your wall thickness when you tilt it in a vacuum chuck and hollow out the inside. And then I did various techniques of decorating. It's okay. I think it needs some more work, but I just learned that since it does have a round bottom, that this is a useless piece. So I guess it's a twofer. Where it's both show and tell and challenge. Sure.
This is a piece called About Time. Mark, who's here, my husband, turned it. And it's a combination of a turning that was from wood from our yard that we salted by putting it in the mud at our pond for a while until it got just about ready to rot. And then he turned it, and then I painted it. It's painted, pierced, fire sanded. Then I collected clock gears and attached them to the top with a 3D pen. It's got piercings that have clock gears in it, and also I embedded dried out contact lenses to make bubbles. And it's got a little sketching on this side, and it's kind of useless because even though it's got a key, you can't really, well, all you have to do is do this to see the inside. So that's my piece. No, I don't airbrush. My airbrush hates me. It's all hand painted. Mike airbrushes. We fuss about airbrushing.
I have a spinning friend that she's also a weaver. And the wood here is ash and cherry. It's both from used or unused anymore looms that she gave me the wood from. But she needed a spinning chair, and the chair she had was an inch too high and an inch too deep. So I made her chair. She's going to cane it. So that's why all the holes are in there. So you can see all of the joints are mortise and tenon with a pin. I call this my crab bowl. It's made of hickory. You can see, look, inside looks like a crab crawling around, which I really like that pattern. So that's why I sent this in. And the next one, Barry, is the side view of the same bowl.
Nice bowl.
What kind of wood is that?
That's hickory.
How was hickory to turn? I've used it for like trim. Hated it.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Have to have really sharp tools.
That's a hollow form that's been turned inside out. So you're seeing the inside of it. And this is supposed to be for April Fools. That means that everything that was on the outside is now in the inside. That is, except for the volume of the original hollow form, that everything inside now is the rest of the universe. That means that you and I, without knowing it, is in that. That's my submission for April Fools.
I think I knew that, Dave.
What's that?
I said, I think I knew that.
Oh, okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And ladies.
So for the challenge, I decided I'd go back into my archives. And what I've done is I've created a negative space bowl. So you can see where the bowl is right here. It's made out of, you can see that it's segmented, and it's made of African bubinga and desert hardwood. I'm not sure, it might be mesquite. But the finish is it's natural rainwater, and I did it up on the firewood pile. So I just thought that this was a excellent example of negative space bowls.
Looks like somebody got a coring tool.
No, this was on a bandsaw. It started on a bandsaw. Yep.
Do you store that rainwater in a stop-loss bag?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I say, do you store your rainwater in a stop-loss bag?
No, but I'm considering it. I'm considering it. They have them this big. I also have a few other things that I've actually been turning. I've been doing some mushrooms. I've done a couple sides. It's fruit tree prunings. So these are apricot. I haven't finished them yet. They're still, I'm letting them dry because they were just cut this year. So I've been using microwave 30 seconds on, and then about an hour, and then 30 seconds, and 30 minutes, and 30 seconds. So they haven't cracked at all. So I'm real happy with that. I also made some smaller ones out of peach, and I did the same thing with the microwave, and you can see they haven't cracked at all. And they're about two weeks. So I'm checking them with moisture meter and they're coming down really well. Also have an egg I did with the egg challenge that was this weekend. And it's the cup. So that was kind of fun to do. First time I'd ever done anything like that. And the last thing is, yeah, go ahead. That's Spectrafly.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yep, exactly. And it has on one side, it has a mushroom, which I thought was appropriate. And the last thing I did is, I've been a busy guy. I did a bowl and it's spalted maple. And I had it in my shop for a couple of years and I thought it was dry, but after all is said and done, it's not. It wasn't. So it split a little bit, but I put some glue into it and colored it up and it looks pretty good. So that's what I've got. But it's beautiful wood.
Nice piece.
Thank you.
We got Bruce Lamb.
I'm starting to think I misunderstood the useless category, but I always thought that useless was my best category. I might have shown this at on Thursday. I'm not sure, but we had Kevin Bedgood come in who does some sculpture, and he takes perfectly good platters and cuts them up. And so I figured I kind of had to show you how I got there before you saw just how useless we get. And on the first one, basically you take 2 platters. And on this one, I broke my rule of I will not do anything that involves carving. And I did some carving on it as well. But basically there's some beads around the edge and beads towards the center. You have a shallow bowl and some other decorative pieces on it. And you then take that and cut both platters up into sections. And what's important for the artistic piece is kind of the angles that you cut these things at. And then you put them together, mixing the 2 platters together, basically. So here it's getting glued up where I'm trying to align somewhat the inner beads and the outer beads to give the piece some flow. And the question is how much uselessness you can get is just how much you want to deal with it. But I found it kind of made this, and I can't quite figure out what else to do with it besides hang it on a wall, but I thought it fit the category.
Indeed.
That's awesome. What was the wood?
That is ambrosia maple.
Any questions?
Just so Bruce knows, there is a wood artist, I think he's from Harrisburg, and he does exactly what you've just done, but he sells it at galleries. So somebody has placed a value on it.
Kevin does this, and he sells these things for thousands of dollars, and so he's on to something, but I'm not sure what it is.
Do you finish the piece before you cut it up?
I did not. Yeah, I think it would be hard to do that because there's pieces that are exposed that aren't exposed until you cut them up. The real trick is getting the good glue joints. I cut them apart on bandsaw, but I have a fairly large disc sander that made it quick work of trying to get these really nice glue joints.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Get rid of the spotlight on him, and we go to Tom White.
Well, I've got something that is actually, since I'm a sensible guy, I couldn't do anything very foolish, but I wanted to show this. This is probably a lesson in how not to do segmented turning. Basically, I started out with about 6 pieces of flat wood and glued them together. And when I went to cut it into a roundish shape, a lot of the glue joints fell apart. So I proceeded to go ahead and turn it, and partway through, somewhere in the middle, it started to separate. So being a clever guy, I put my suction pump on there and sucked some glue into the joints and pressed it back together again, and it seemed to work okay. I expect this will probably fall apart in about a year. But anyhow, it's not bad, but it's what I do sometimes, is do foolish stuff.
Can we see the inside?
Very contemporary.
True.
Show us the inside, please.
Okay.
Okay. So the bottom's probably gonna part first, yeah.
That's one solid piece on the bottom though, so be able to hold it together.
Okay.
Last few days, I've been making some wig stands, and it was a bit of a challenge for me because I had to figure out how to hold it. So this is the first one that I made, and this is just made from 2x6, and I wasn't going to really do much, but it turned out pretty good, so I wound up putting a finish on it, and it's going to come apart. I haven't glued them together. And one of the questions I had earlier was I want to send it to you folks because I'm not going to make it to Lancaster to drop one off. This is another one. This is from Norway maple. And I tried a few different ways of holding him. I made I guess a mandrel. This is cedar. And this one, I made a recess to hold it. Some of the other things I held with I guess you call it a mandrel made 3/4 inch holes. And so I jammed that in there and then, turned it and put spigots on the one end. Also, what I've been making, I needed a shoehorn. So it's about 19 inches long. And a friend gave me an solid oak cabinet door that she had replaced. So I made one for myself and I did a little burning, a couple of simple beads. And then I decided to make one for her. And this end is just hand carved, used a 4.5 inch sanding disc and a little bit of carving tools and so forth. So that's what I've been doing recently. And as far as the wig stands, I guess this is what I should do. I'll email Barry and find out who and where I should send it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, John. I have a question for Mike Peace. Where's Mike? There you are. Mike, Mr. Peace. You posted a video recently about a mug similar to what Barry showed.
Yeah, that's a Cook's modeled after one by Mike Mahoney.
Did you remove your handle on yours?
Oh no, it's all one piece.
So you carved it or you hand sanded it, and the
no, I didn't do much hand sanding. It was all either on a belt sander or a Dremel sander.
But it was turned on the inside.
Yes.
And then you drilled. If I remember, you bandsawed similar to how Barry did around the profile.
Yep.
Okay.
Mike's was more of a ceremonial cup.
Now, actually, it's a traditional Scandinavian drinking cup for hikers and campers and Laplanders or whatever.
Thank you.
This is a piece of English walnut, natural edge. First time I had done a footed one, I thought it came out pretty good. I like the figure of it, the wood.
Lift it up a bit. There you go.
What's your finish on that, Ben?
That's a lacquer. I used a lacquer actually just a spray lacquer, and then I use the Bio polishing.
What do you carve the feet out with then?
I turned the recess in where I was holding my chuck. Then I turned it down to this thickness. And then just took a sander and sanded everything off. So,
Good technique.
I belong to a flatboard club down in York, and they had a meeting where they wanted you to turn something out of two different kind of wood and something that would hold something. And I turn all small stuff. I turn a lot of birdhouse, Christmas tree ornaments. And there was one fellow in the background there said that I couldn't turn anything because it wouldn't hold anything. So this is made out of sycamore and cherry, and it holds toothpicks.
Ah, cool. Thanks, Jack.
This is the wig stand I turned for Cancer Center. It's all walnut. I did use my texturing router jig and the indexing head on my lathe to get the grooves in there. And then also sort of flutes to tie it together. And at the very top, there's a recess, and that was done with a Sorby spiraling tool. Matt, did you experiment on something else for that bottom? Yeah, I just winged it. Really? Yeah. I figured it was thick enough. If I didn't like it, I would turn it out and try something different.
That's all black walnut.
Yeah, it's all walnut.
Nice piece.
Thank you.
I was going to show this as a series of pictures, but my iPad is causing reverberation issues, and so let's go ahead and do it here in person. Okay, this is a just under 7-inch diameter, just a piece of scrap walnut. Actually, it's got a lot of cracks, and it still is not fully dried. It was just harvested, I think, 2 years ago, and it was checking pretty badly. And I was going to throw it out, but I decided to make it my first turning on using my my version of a sphere cutting jig. And here's that. It goes on the bed of the lathe, of course, and you just turn these 90 degrees to engage it on there, tighten it down through some Allen screws on top. The pivot for it is, it turns out that 1/2-inch copper pipe is exactly 5/8 of an inch OD. So I took advantage of that fact, and I actually had some 5/8 collars, like you see here, that clamp on very tightly and push the copper up through the bottom in the pivot. Kind of hard to. Anyhow, if you center up the obviously center up the piece of copper right at what you want to have as the center of your sphere, as you rotate this left and right between stop limits, like the spur drive or the tailstock, you can get up to you can get it down to about 2 inches on each end where you're fully turned. Now I didn't start off with a cylinder. I started off with, I used the traditional method of turning the cylinder into like an octagonal looking, 45 degrees on each side, just to avoid the endless process of advancing a 1/16 of an inch at a time on those corners. And so once I had it as like an octagon, I put this into play. And principal feature, it is absolutely tight, and it cannot be moved by hand. It requires turning this. And it turns quite easily. It's just that it's been frictioned down to the point where I have these, I made these gibs, and the whole thing is Purple Heart just because I happen to have a lot of Purple Heart. But it does work pretty nice. So it has the upright portion at its base has 90-degree set at 45-degree male parts on it. And then these are just cut at the same time on the table saw at the same height and such. And the one gib has been glued in place, so it's permanent. The other one, the 4 screws just hold it down tight against the base. And then I have set screws on the side that I ground the face of them fairly flat so they wouldn't pierce the wood, they would press against it. And they basically, by tightening them up, you can tighten it to the point where it will no longer slide by hand, but you use the advanced wheel here. And it just advances it. This is a 3/8/16 thread, so each full turn advances to the 16th of an inch. And the cutter is, you buy this stuff on Amazon, you know, it's a 1/2-inch high-speed steel cutter that I've ground into a got a negative rake on top, which I realized only at the beginning of turn that any sphere you turn, you're going to wind up turning end grain in some place. And so the negative rake really helped out on not tearing out the wood. So I'll be happy to provide any documentation or pictures if anybody wants to make a version of it. This sphere, I don't recall where I originally had it mounted. I think it was mounted more or less on the near the pith. The pith does not go through the exact center, although it looks like that. But it was the wood was already pretty heavily checked, and I'm waiting for it to fully dry, and then I'll do a return between cups and fill all the cracks with turquoise powder or something contrasting. That's my trick.
Questions for Barry? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very nice, Barry.
Thank you.
All right. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If anybody has a big bandsaw out there, I don't know if you sharpen your blades or not. I have a bandsaw in my shop, which is 20 inch, so it has a 143-inch blade, and I used to sharpen those by hand. But recently, or a couple of years ago, we bought a portable wood mill, bandsaw mill, and we have several blades we go through in the summertime. And so this is a automatic bandsaw blade sharpener. The electronics, there's just a power supply. There's a 12-volt motor that's geared down 10 to 1. The grinder itself is like a $30 chainsaw blade grinder, sharpener. And so basically there's a cam. You have to make the cam. So you make a pusher mechanism, and the motor's turning at 10 RPM. And so you build the cam so that it follows the blade. Anyways, it was kind of an interesting project. I've sharpened 10 blades on it so far. It worked pretty good.
And how big is that blade? What's its width?
That is 1 1/8 inch blade. It's 144 inches long.
Looks like what, 2 or 3 teeth per inch?
Oh, it's 3. That's like 1.5 teeth per inch.
Okay.
They're pretty. This is for cutting lumber, so they're pretty. They're pretty sparse. They cut very well. Actually, I've switched to the larger, 3 teeth per inch of my bandsaw. I like it better just because they cut so much better.
Does your contraption work with fewer teeth per inch or with more teeth per inch?
It does, but what you have to do is make another. The cam is specific to each blade. So as an example, my softwood blades are 7/8 of an inch from tip to tip of the teeth. Hardwood blades are 3/4 of an inch. So in each case, I have a separate cam. I'll just turn the sound on a little bit. actually have another short video that gives you more detail on the grinding if you guys want to see it.
That's very cool.
It worked better than I thought it would, to be honest with you.
How do you determine the design or the layout of the cam?
Okay, well, you see this arm that the cam is pushing up and down? What you
Yes.
do is you take those when you first put the cam, it's just a 6-inch circle, right? You take the bearing off, you set the blade, you set the grinder to the lowest part, just past touching the tooth. And then what you do is you move it by hand. And in this, when you do that, you're using a pencil, and you just follow the curve of the blade and mark it with a pencil. So at that point, you have the low point and the high point. After that, the rest is just a curve for going up and down. So you make it a shallow curve. You can kind of see it here, where coming out of the high point in this, you see that curve goes up to the actual top. So it's kind of interesting. It worked better than, as I said, it worked better than I thought, but that's how you do it. Let me see if I can get the other, here we go. So this is just a more detail of when I was fine tuning, I had to look and see what was going on there. Just to give you an idea. As we get a little further on this one, this will just run a few seconds. You might get a better look at the cam wheel. Almost there. There it goes. So you can see the odd shape of the cam wheel. As I said, just one cam wheel for each blade. And that's about it.
Oh, that was awesome. That's awesome. Wow, indeed.
It was a fun project.
Where did you find that design?
I didn't.
Out of your own design.
Well, I went to Woodland Mills. I went to Frontier Mills where we bought the bandsaw, and they sell their own machine. These machines sell for $1,200 to $1,500. Theirs look pretty complicated. I found another one on Woodland Mills, which is a Canadian manufacturer, and theirs kind of look like that. That's where I got the idea from. So there was no plans. You kind of have to, just have to engineer it as you go and wing it. But yeah, when we bought those blades, if you buy one of them, they're like $35. You buy 10 at a time, they're about 25. But and you can sharpen them about apparently 4 to 6 times. After that, you've gone past the peak of the blade, which is hardened. You can still sharpen them, of course. They just don't last very long. So we'll see how long they last now.
Have you made a tool to set the tooth set?
I've made 2 cams. One for the one I mentioned earlier, 7/8, or the softwood blade, and another one for the hardwood blades.
No, I mean the offset of the tooth for the clearance of the blade. There's a set, it's not dead center. It's pushed to the side. It's the set of the tooth.
You mean, I see. Yes, of course. Actually, I made another tool for that.
Right.
So,
I figured you're pretty clever.
Well, honestly, I made a tool at first that wasn't strong enough. Those teeth are extremely hard to bend. And the only time I've had a problem with bent teeth so far is when we hit a nail. And I've cut trees that, the neighbors gave us this big pine tree. It was great till you ran into those things that held up thing years ago. and if you hit them with a blade and you hit them at 90 degrees, blade cuts right through them. It doesn't do much damage. You hit one at a 45, it raises hell with them. So then you have to set the teeth.
Ted, one of our members, I think before you joined, he's from Germany, Kai Kurte. He has he got it somewhere, an antique mechanical one that you turn the crank on it, and it has a triangular file that is connected to it. And the crank does exactly what your cam system does. It advances it one tooth at a time. And the file goes across the tooth, and it just has this like harmonic motion.
Oh, I'd like to see that. I'll have to ask Kai about that on Thursday.
I've got a little video of that. I'll send you a link when I get it tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm already decided to make a different one next winter because you may notice that those are hook teeth. And no matter how you build these, even the ones they sell, they don't keep that hook. So the first sharpening where you're just taking off a thousandths or a couple thousandths, it's okay. You might get away with not disturbing that hook too much for 2 or 3 sharpenings. After that, you're going to undercut that. You're going to cut that hook out. So I'm thinking of building a different one next winter that will have 2 cams. One will adjust to that hook. We'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Ted.
Yes, thank you very much.